Good morning, everybody. Hello. All right, good morning. See people still coming in and getting settled, but that's okay. We are going to get started on our session titled Creating a Culture. Louder? Oh, I thought he said I didn't have to because this mic is it picks up everything. Okay. So, talking about creating a culture of innovation, it's really a broad topic, and you could go different directions. We could be tech-focused, or we could talk about some commitment, aligning innovation with your organizational vision and strategy, staff buy-in, leveraging partnerships, building a strong team, and hopefully that will provoke a discussion, and we can have a very active, engaged conversation around creating a culture. And I know in a room this size, it might be hack or jump in or ask a question. Please feel free to do that. We have somebody in the room who can help us with walking a mic over if we need to do that as well. So just feel free to jump in. Okay. So I am Cherie Gilchrist, and I am the Chief Innovation. And joining me today is Ashley Campbell, who is the CEO of Legal Aid of North Carolina. And we also have Jeff Kelly, who is a partner at Nelson Mullins, and Nate Vogel, who is the director of the analysts. And then we'll jump right into some questions that I have for them, and we'll get started. So, as I said, Ashley is the executive director of Legal Aid of North Carolina. She began her career at Legal Aid in 2003, representing clients in the area of landlord-tenant and domestic in Raleigh. She transitioned her practice to Campbell Law School in 2016, where she served as the director of the Blanchard Community Law Clinic. And she's with us today as our new executive director. She's only been with Legal Aid for 18 months. And Nate, the director of the Digital Innovation Lab and policy advocate. Before joining CLS, Nate served as a law clerk for the Honorable Judge Gerald Austin McHugh of the Federal District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and worked for the New York Civil Liberties Union as a legislative counsel. Involved in data analytics, artificial intelligence, digital assets, and fintech. Jeff also serves in several leadership positions at the intersection of law, technology, and increasing access to justice, and he is on our board. He's part of Legal Aid's board, as well as the advisory board chair for the innovation. And I'm going to say Lance. Lance is what we use here in North Carolina as an abbreviated form of Legal Aid of North Carolina. So if you hear me say that, it's Legal Aid. All right, so you started, Lance, 18 months ago. And during the search and the interview process, you spent a lot of time focused on creating 12 months. And of course, my job as the Chief Innovation Officer was part of that vision. So tell me, where did the idea for the Innovation Lab come from, and what does that mean to you in the legal services program?
So thank you, Cherie, and our microphones are apparently a little interesting that Cherie said go North Carolina, and that is because she is a Duke grad, and she should have said go Heels.
That's why, no, right? I'm not saying that.
Yes. No. So as a double Tar Heel. But I do see a lot of our North Carolina colleagues in the room, not only from Legal Aid of North, which is a wonderful organization in North Carolina. So welcome to all of you to our great state, and we are looking forward to getting to know you better. Really excited about this topic, which is something close to my heart, which is how do we create a culture of innovation at our legal services organizations. And as they did a national search for the executive director, and I had to participate in 10 interviews to win the job. But as part of that, we had to really think critically about what was our vision for Legal Aid of North Carolina and what did we want to do when we came into this role. And as Cherie mentioned, I say we're not where innovation goes to die, but where innovation goes to thrive, right? It's really about just creating an intention and a space for innovative ideas to prosper. So where did the idea come from? Well, I was on a regulatory committee of the North Carolina State Bar, actually with Jeff, and this is actually where I met Jeff. One of those was the Utah Sandbox, which I know many of you are familiar with. And the concept there is that you kind of go into the sandbox. It's a regulatory structure. You go into the sandbox to do creative things, to play around and do things that are different and to see if they work. Now, the North Carolina State Bar did not accept a regulatory sandbox for our state, but it got me thinking, well, if in our regulatory framework, I think that's something really important for me to point out, we aren't trying to do anything outside of our current regulatory framework, but that's really where the idea came from. What Utah had done and a creative approach to difficult challenges. So that was where the Innovation Lab came from. And additions of legal aid, but she also has a really creative and innovative approach to the problems that face us. And so she's put together a great team, and I think they're having a lot of success sort of identifying and forming solutions to some of the challenges that we have to access in North Carolina.
So with that back, this broader strategic goals of the firm, and then what does it really mean to create a culture of innovation? What's the role of leadership in that?
So I think my role as a leader to create an innovative culture is for this to be something I lead with, really in all aspects of the paralegal level all the way to the leadership level. Are we bringing in folks who have an innovative mindset, who are going to approach problems creatively? One of the things that we're doing right now is we're inviting some of our law school interns to come to the Innovation Lab, and these are folks who are interested in innovation in law school, source it. And I think this is one of the most difficult things, and I think it's important for conversation for all of us, right? Every time you take a resource away, you're potentially serving less clients, right? If you're resourcing 5 employees in an innovation lab, you're taking away potentially 5 salaries of staff. A piece of technology that allows us to serve more people more efficiently, but it's going to take us 12 to 18 months to develop that. We should make that investment today because it's going to pay off in the future. And I think that the leader has got to be able to communicate that to her staff, that the client, to make that investment in the front end. So I think you really have to be willing to resource it and communicate your vision.
And seek alternate sources of funding, right? So that we're not draining or client services.
That's right. So we believe, and we've already seen that the Innovation North Carolina, with a lot of resources, that is not a traditional LSC services funder. We've got Cherie's developing relationships with folks at Adobe. We are meeting with LexisNexis, which obviously is a legal services provider, but has not historically funded our program. And it is attracting.
Just switching gears a little bit, Jeff, I'm going to turn to you. As someone who works with a large law firm and is deeply concerned about access to justice, but you also collaborate closely with Legal Aid of North Carolina and other legal services programs in the state. What is your perspective as a non-legal aid employee expand capacity for innovation?
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. So it's really, I'll give a twofold answer here. There's the piece of it which is, I actually don't think that it's that unusual for these partnerships to come. It's just that oftentimes we don't, as kind of outside big law firms or big companies, are very big on supporting it. And a lot of the problems that I solve for my clients every day are the same kind of digital transformation and process improvement problems that you all are looking at. So again, it's something that while, yes, there's a different kind of client base, I think a lot of the same problems that we're seeing with E&Y Legal and also McGuire Woods, another big law firm, their ALSP division. And I know I'm throwing a lot of jargon at you, so I'll get to the point. What we're saying is we've talked about how problematic it is to improve intake and help people that understand vaguely that they have a legal problem, find how in and how do we basically improve our intake, how do we help make information more readily available. And of course, for those of us that help our corporate clients go through this type of process of how do we make more resources available online, how do we make sure we don't lose the personal touch when we're having people come to us. And you kind of all had light bulbs go off and say, we we deal with this every day. These are things that more than these kind of in passing conversations, but get people in a room with you, sit down and hash through in kind of a design, kind of free-flowing conversation, and you'll very quickly see a lot of opportunities. So that to me has been a really exciting part of this, is because not only do I, as someone that provides legal services and thinks a lot about regulatory issues, not just in, I do a lot of feedback on here's what we do, but more importantly, I think one of the first things I did when I was appointed to the board of directors before we even launched the Innovation Lab was I just went around to a lot of Lance's internal staff meetings, and I just wanted to hear kind of what issues were being discussed and what types of problems they were encountering, because I am an outsider. So there's a lot of just intake, and I'll give hats off to Ashley as well. I think that it was probably 3 months after you took the CEO position before I could even see you, because she went to every 100 counties in the state to meet with everyone in Lance. So I tried to follow suit, don't have the same energy, but I at least took a page out of her playbook on that.
Yeah, and one of the things your board is made up of experts in, it was a broad field, academia, technologists, business people, and just different groups to get a broader perspective and to get the ideas generated about how we can improve the delivery of services to clients. So leveraging that board in the room, I see Pegeen over there, who's a technologist. So I think that's also been very helpful for us as we plot our path forward. The other thing, Jeff, I don't know if you want to talk about, or collaboration with the Duke Center on Law and Technology and North Carolina, collaboration with them on design thinking and a design sprint. And do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I always want to talk about design sprints. And while I'm rambling, can you all give me a show of hands? How many of you have ever participated in a design program or a design sprint? Okay, so we've got some takers here, but for the rest of you, what this is, we teach students about both the design process, introduce them to basic legal problems, or maybe not even presuppose that it's legal, just here's a problem in the community, how can we design solutions to address them? And they spend the day working with experts and coaches and teams and prototype basically a solution that they pitch at the end of the day. And so over time, we've refined that in December, and if you aren't tired of listening to me by the end of this presentation, I recorded a podcast for Duke on this, so you can hear more about that in detail. But the skinny of it is that we worked in partnership with Legal Aid of North Carolina to focus on how do we solve certain problems around intake? How do people find us? How do clients and potential clients a wide variety of solutions of things like maybe we bring the information to them. They appreciated after a day of this that a lot of your clients out there don't have access to internet, don't have access to the same forms of communication. So how do we make that accessible, especially to rural communities? I know that legal deserts and rural access is a big point of conversation today. So had the winning team was essentially see about problem solving around that. We also had the winning team was essentially looking at and identified some of the exact intake problems that we had just started to work on with the Innovation Lab. So again, it's remarkable how quickly students can get up to speed on these things and exercise. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of pedagogical value of having a design sprint, but how do we take this a step further beyond just, this is a great idea, but how do we actually bring it into execution? So we've been working on creating internships and other academic support so the students can continue to build on this. And
information and knowledge, but they really approach the work like our clients. They have it's a blank slate for them. So when they're looking at some of the challenges that we're facing and how we can address them, the lens that they use is much different. Intake system, so that we can better help them identify, do they have a legal issue, what that legal issue is legal aid the right source of help for them, or should they be directed to another service provider, or could we redirect them to a problem that we have? Because one of the challenges that we have is we receive 400,000 calls every year at Lance, and there's no way that we're going to ever be able to serve 400,000 people. But part of the issue was that we were not properly screening this, was a lot of frustration about what legal aid can do or what legal aid isn't doing. And so working at that front end will help us minimize some of the frustrations. It will get the clients through the process in a way that you and I are essentially creating incubators, which is a unique model for legal aid programs. Tell us a little bit more about your work and how it relates to creating a culture of innovation.
For sure. So I'm 5 months old at this point. Before this, I was supervising the IT department. I'm a lawyer by training, but I was doing supervising the IT department at CLS for several years. We were looking at what I would internal quality assurance, internal grant reporting, as well as external tools. We run an expungement generator that I did not write. That was a really excellent attorney in our employment unit years ago. But we run this expungement generator that using code to solve like specific legal problems and understand legal work in a way that is different from running the computers and the networks and the file systems and things like that. And then it's also for, as Cherie said, it's for incubating ideas. So incubating different ways of approaching problems that we have. As doing a lot of software development, I look around at the sort of broader software development world, free open source software out there for doing data warehousing and data orchestration, building custom software applications that do really impressive things. And so part of the idea with our Digital Innovation Lab is to reach out into those data orchestration, data warehousing, a broader data infrastructure, use free open source software development techniques to build screening tools to help members of the public get information about accessing information. And then just to try lots of different approaches to using open source software in particular, and see what works. And then some of it's not going to work, but that's okay. That's like what it be, and like be ready for that.
And something you said, Nate, about something not working, I want to address that just in a little bit. We tend to talk about innovation in sort of the fun ways, right? The owned fun. But part of that is also there has to be a structure and a process that drives that innovation to ensure that it will be sustainable and that we have a steady flow of new ideas. Because we're in a room brainstorming all day long, creating things, and we made a mistake and it doesn't work. For legal aid, that's a waste of resources. So if we're failing, there has to be an outcome. It's teaching us something. We've learned something from the experiment that we ran. It's not just mistakes that waste resources. And so we have to create a balance between the creativity and the process and systems that allow us to have a sustainable program. And thinking framework, there's the open innovation, where you're using internal and external data to create different pathways for process changes. I mean, you've heard about disruptive innovation. And for us, was at the core, that is our North Star. If all else fails, we know that Legal Aid of North Carolina is here to deliver exceptional services to people who need those services. And so that's our guiding light, and we don't sway from that. So when we're developing tools or process changes for services and meets a need that's not being met, or serve a geographical area that's currently not being served, and allocate resources in an effective and efficient way. And of course, the other side of that coin is giving our staff the tools and the resources and the support, and not just the design team that I have, but building a team that supports staff.
So I'd love to do that. So do you mind going to my Sean slide?
Okay.
Sean, who's in here, we have a slide with your face on it. So, so this is Sean Burke. His first question about building a team. So as we started thinking about if we're going to innovate and we're going to use technology to innovate, we are going to need someone who can help us do this with elevated skills. And so we made again, that was a decision at the beginning to invest some resources. And we knew also that if we brought in the right leader with the right skills, that that investment would pay off in spades. And so we did do a really intensive search, and honestly, used a great IT, and he was really attracted to our mission and to doing mission work in a second half, and also wanted to really know, were we serious about innovation? Like, were we serious about this? Because if he was going to decision to invest in our belief that we could find someone great, and then he wanted to know, are you serious about it? Because this is really why I want to come serve with you guys. So I think that's a success story that I wanted to share with you, where it worked out, because I think we were really thoughtful about it, technology to innovate. But I want to be clear about one thing, which is that when we're thinking about an innovation mindset at Legal Aid of North Carolina, we are not just thinking about technology. We are thinking about everything. So I want to give you a specific example of how landlord-tenant work. We'll know that oftentimes just the filing of a complaint against your client, even if you're able to get it dismissed, can keep your client from getting housing later. In North Carolina, there's no expunction process to get rid of that complaint. So if on search or credit check on our client, they will see that and they will deny them housing. Okay? So in a typical framework, I think we think about, okay, let's keep doing exactly what we're doing in the way we deliver services, which is we start the representation after the complaint's been filed because we can't, blah, blah. And I said, let's just pretend like we do not do anything the way that we do it now. I want you to start there in thinking about how to solve this problem. Should we develop space did not exist 25 years ago, right? Which is where people finally got tired of hashing it out and destroying families, and so decided they needed a collaborative sort of mediation approach to resolve issues. So I use that as an example, and I said, I really want us to think about, should we do all, because we've got lots of folks invested in the current system. But Cherie just said it, we need to do what's best for our clients. And if that means helping them before this really bad thing happens that we can't undo, then we need accessible. But we're really talking about our mindset when we're talking about a culture of innovation. And I think that, I don't know if y'all saw Elisa's session. I thought it was so awesome, her opening plenary. And she said, different is the new normal. It's a whole different way of thinking about how we deliver services.
And I'm going to go back to Nate a little bit, because when we were talking about this presentation, you were sharing some ways that you're using data, leveraging qualitative and quantitative data. Talk about data all the time. Legal aid programs are rich in data because of the number of people that we serve. How can we leverage our data in a way that can inform our strategies and allocation of resources?
For sure. So I think one thing that we were building measures of where your relative service weaknesses are. So you could look at how many cases do we serve in each geographic area of your legal services, and then compare those things. We can make an assumption, that's probably a safe assumption, that your organization is not gonna meet 100% of the need, but you can compare the need that exists to the proportion of your own service then would be proportional if we were fairly distributing the services that we provide across the state. There are really great platforms for visualizing that kind of information too. So you can use something like Power BI, or there are lots of different ways to visualize Power BI. So you can visualize that, and you can collect data sources from both public data sets that articulate what the needs are for your services, and then you can use your internal data to see what services you're providing, and then match those two things up, and then look at across geographic groupings. Are there geographic areas that we're services that we provide fairly according to age groupings, or racial groupings, or gender groupings? And so you can combine these sorts of different sources of information, join them together, and then have been useful at CLS multiple times for fellowship applications in particular, to say we really want a fellow who's going to focus on this particular part of the city of Philadelphia, because we know that there's a lot of arrests that come in that particular, and so we really need some money. We need to hire somebody to focus on that part of the city, and that kind of like direct sort of data to action connection is really effective, and so we had some success with that.
And I wanted to add to that, because I think that's just in Wake County, which is where Raleigh is located, to ask for funding for services there. And what we were talking about was, I wish I had that data for the number of eviction filings in the service area, so that I could have compared that county where Charlotte is located, and we have 0 where Wake County is. So see, what I could show them is, you've got sort of the same number of filings, but this is how much more we're able to do for the citizens of Mecklenburg County because of the additional funding. So the connection I'm trying to make people, you can make a compelling case to local government, rural funders, whoever it is in your community, about why you need resources there.
Can I jump in and ask a loaded question, since we're right on the precipice between talking about forming a team and now data-driven solutions, launching a digital innovation lab? Both of you have actually, you're not external hires. You're coming from existing roles within your organizations into a completely different role. And so you both have identified some really cool things using your background in the organization, but for a lot of the folks in the room that are maybe looking at from your existing role, and being able to take the time to ask these questions, how do we as a group, even in a smaller organization, earmark someone's time, or frankly all of their time, to start asking these questions, and how do we use that as a way of getting to those types of identifications?
I'll start, because I've been at Legal Aid as a child, and I didn't think I could work as a lawyer full time, and so I started as an hourly staff attorney at Legal Aid of North Carolina 17 years ago. And for me, what I had to do was set aside my own value, a blank slate. And that has been tremendously helpful. And one of the first things that we did was I brought in some interns, because we talked about fixing our intake system. Like I said, we get 400,000 calls. And one of the things that I did was we brought in some interns. I was the director of our intake unit for several years. I had managed it. I had my own ideas about how intake works, how it should work, what we could do to improve it, and what resources we needed. I did not share any of that with them. I gave them and when they came back to us, some of it, it was a little bit hard to swallow because I was the manager of that system. But what it did is that it allowed me to see quite clearly the blind spots that I had worked, and you're thinking from the attorney perspective of delivering services and creating your pleadings and getting your work right and all these things. You develop blind spots that you don't realize that you have. So I had to shed that and let it go and approach I'm going to steal. And this is from my experience working at Legal Aid so long, is that I recognize that we've always been innovative in legal aid programs, because we've always had to be innovative and creative. We just don't have processes and things that were happening. And it was really about how then can we capture that and create a structure around it that facilitates those ideas and moves them from ideation to implementation. So it's recognizing.
I would say for us, the sort of making the change from, so I was supervising the IT department, making the change to creating the Digital Innovation Lab, for us was a pretty organic transition. I came to CLS expecting to do, at a certain point, it just becomes clear that it's really a different thing and should have its own different home from the IT side of things, which is like so critically important that you need somebody running it who's focusing on that all the time. So making the IT side of things to being this Digital Innovation Lab was pretty organic. And I think we're starting to see across the legal services field, organizations, lots of organizations, or more organizations, I think, are starting to recognize that like your data and how to store it, and how to manage anonymous. Who's an expert in relational data and how to store it, and how to manage anonymization, or how to manage privacy in relational databases, and how to integrate data sources from different places, how to deploy web services that are public-facing computers and managing inventory. So I think we are starting to see across the sector that people are recognizing that these are different things, and it's worth, you need expertise in both of them, and they kind of need different homes. So for us, it was pretty organic, and I think for others, it's maybe organic as well.
I have one little funny story to share, and Nate, I bet you'll appreciate this. So when she unit, and I mean, was just so busy with employees and personnel issues and all kind of thing. So then she's the chief innovation officer, and it's just her. She goes, well, what am I supposed to do? I said, literally sit and think.
That's what she told me.
I said, sit
Yeah.
and daydream. And she had a really hard time with this. Started meeting with all of these other sort of innovation folks in the community, and we're in the Research Triangle Park, so we're in a really innovative space, and getting new ideas. And now she's rocking and rolling with that. But that was a big change, and I'm sure it was the same for you, Nate, in terms of how you were operating versus the.
Having an innovation lab, so to speak. It was an idea. You heard Ashley's story, and we set an intention that this is what we were going to do. We did not have funding for it. I was the only person attached to it at that point, but we said we're doing it, and we launched it. There was no website, there was nothing. We said we're doing it, and we did it. Leaders, big law firm people with deep pockets to come in and see what we're doing, and just generate some excitement around improving the delivery of services to people who are marginalized and need it the most. And that excitement and that constant conversation about it, I can talk about the Innovation Lab, and it is a real thing. But when we launched it, there was an idea.
Can I pro tip? Hit that launch button, and it forces people like me to really step in and help. So if you have someone you're having a...
What are some of the biggest challenges? Nathan, I talked personally, but what do you see, Ashley, as some of the biggest challenges in creating a culture of innovation? And what suggestions would you have? And anybody jump in as you're innovating in your own programs. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges to create?
Following a leader who is a really terrific leader who built a great program, but he was in the role for 20 years, and this was not his focus. He had a different focus. And so people aren't really sure what I'm talking about a lot of times, right? They don't really know, like, what is an innovation lab about it, and showing people what it means. We actually had a statewide summit for all of our staff last year, and so we decided that would be a great place to literally show people how it works. So we did a design exercise at the summit, and finally it clicked. But I really think sort of helping people understand what it means to sort of to set like intention or creativity.
Allows me the freedom to go out and do the things that I need to do to make it successful. So you need that champion within the organization to do that. You also need staff buy-in. One of the first staff meetings I had, somebody asked, you also need staff buy-in to do them. I have 50 cases that I have to manage. How is this different, and what are you gonna do? And it was a little jarring to get that as the first comment when I'm trying to talk about innovation. We can not just get them involved where you're trying to get feedback and input, but integrate them into the process so they take ownership of it as well. It's not my innovation lab. It's not Ashley's innovation lab. It's Legal Aid of North Carolina's innovation lab to improve the delivery of services to clients. So and they are the bridge between the innovation lab, the advisory board, and the staff. We're creating processes where they can openly interact and share their input with us and their feedback and design ideas. And we are going to really be intentional about showing them that, listen, maybe it would have gotten to a certain level, but it would not have gotten to implementation. We'll now get to implementation because you have somebody like me who's going to drive that forward. We're hiring a project manager with project management skills and design experience so that they can move ideas to
see how it impacts them. So you saw the slide earlier with Sean Burke, our new Chief Technology Officer. So we were having, I bet you guys know about this, challenges getting all of our retainers signed, right? And so we realized, and what we have housing clinics in multiple. We're going to get missed, right? And so Sean said, okay, great, I'm going to go to court with them. So he went to court with them and he watched everything they did. And then he's like, they need iPads. They need iPads with the retainer agreements so that they can all be signed using DocuSign. Then we're going to figure out how we get it up in Legal Server, and we're going to develop a totally streamlined process. Well, but I think until the staff sees how it helps their service to their clients, you're going to have a challenge getting buy-in.
And it's that low-hanging fruit that gives you the wins that you need for the buy-in too. You know, our goal is transformation and disruption, but that's our goal. Staff just needs to see the win. So those low-hanging fruits are the things changes that are just as impactful. Okay, so look. Oh. A microphone.
A case management and data specialist as an organization in Philadelphia. And I'm curious if you can talk about the buy-in when it's reversed. What happens when the staff have a ton of ideas and the leadership aren't sold on change?
And I'm not the expert on that. I mean,
There's a couple of things. One, I'm glad that we actually had the opposite problem of how do we organize all of the input that you all were getting. But when it's something that, as someone, I've been waiting for someone like Ashley to be at the helm so I can come in and say, look, I realize that I'm not your traditional partner, but here's the things that I've learned and I'm seeing from working with my clients that would benefit. Again, there are lots of people out there that would be excited to help you do these things. And so if your leadership doesn't necessarily see the immediate value of that, I mean, sometimes it is hard to take input from inside. And especially if you're referring to how do I convince my leaders, I'm presuming you're in a subordinate position. So again, having external folks, people on the boards of these systems, I mean, I know that even before Ashley, I was getting traction with a lot of the different offices because they were near universities I work with. We got pilot projects and clinics off the ground. So it is a little bit more work, but sometimes change takes time. But those are, I would look outside and try and bring people into what you're doing as well. Channel that energy with other partners first.
And I would say, the change management is really challenging. And you're right, if leadership is not invested, that's an even steeper hurdle to overcome. But one of the things that I've learned in just my general experience working in a legal aid organization that strapped with resources and where we were previously very, very client focused and not necessarily in the way that was generating new ideas for change, but just delivering service, just getting through the cases and the work, is how you approach the leader and how you approach your suggestion for change. And timing of how you do that, for me, was very important because, as Ashley said, I managed a really large office with lots of client needs coming in every day, plus staff issues. And so, a combination of timing, because if we're in the middle of a funding crunch, it's not the right time to pitch a new idea. So timing your suggestion for change is really crucial. Also, showing the benefit. We used data a lot to show the benefit of change in a process. And we were able to get a lot of things done at our centralized intake unit that some of the offices perhaps weren't able to do because we had so much data coming through our centralized intake unit that we could actually demonstrate and support, back up what we're asking for with real information and real data. And so that was one solution. That was another solution that I personally used before in my role.
Have any of you been successful in convincing a leader to be more innovative? Do you might have a success story they want to share? Oh, yeah, should we do this?
So my organization is not a legal organization. We're a consultancy that focuses on building technology. I work for a company called Cactus Consulting Group, and right next to me is our Chief Technology Officer, Colin, and one of our co-founders. I think him and his other co-founder, Tobias, just sort of emanate the type of leadership that allows for innovation. So my example is started during the beginning of the pandemic. I started reading materials about how to foster organizational change within organizations. And I got really into it, and I had just had a new baby. I drove this book over to Tobias's house, and he tells a story that the first 20 pages got him through because I drove all the way to his house, and then he got through the rest of the book that evening because it was so interesting. What that turned into was a conversation on a roof about how to change the organizational structure of our company, which they, with open arms, embraced, and we're on this now 4-year journey of having done that. And it ran right up against another employee suggesting that we move to an employee ownership model. And so back in 2022, Colin and Tobias sold 49% of the business to the employees as a succession model. And so when we talk about opening the door for innovation, some of that is changing the way we're organized and the systems that we use to organize people. And so when you open the door for more ownership, like true ownership, you automatically open the door for more innovation. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do some of the crazy things that I do on behalf of our company if it wasn't for Colin and his partner.
And Colin, we have a connection with Colin because Colin has been volunteering his time for, 3 years, building an expunction petition generator. We got it to the place where we were about to launch it, and then we switched to e-filing. And so we have to now change it, but Colin is still working with us to change it. And I have to say, you mentioned the Access to Justice Group Commission staff that here, they also have a petition generator tool that's public facing that works really well. So we're not duplicating efforts. Now that they have their tool, we're just refocusing ours in a different way. But thank you, Colin, for your time. Somebody else had a question?
So Ashley, John Greiner, one of the things you said about the third rail, I think is really appropriate, that there's this fear, and fear can sort of close people's eyes and close their minds. And we in the New York State Tech Conference, we had a session on failure, and we were able to attract quite a few executive directors, and Lillian Moy and I facilitated that, but we couldn't get anybody to talk about failure and outcomes from it, right? What do you get from it? And so I guess, you know, that you're an exceptional leader, and there are more exceptional leaders in the community now, I gotta say, having been in it for so many years, but I think what can we do to foster sort of that leadership mindset, and certainly middle managers who are gonna be the next executive directors, you know, and again, I think a lot of things that you said about it's not a zero-sum game. You can attract new funding. We can do small things too. But I guess what's the avenue outside of ITC, because there are a lot of folks, leaders who aren't here, who may never come here, And so how do we get the broader legal aid, community, EJC and other places to think about innovation, not just also in terms of technology, but as part of their job as a leader?
So I have a couple specific recommendations. So one is that the Legal Services Corporation can lead in this area. They are influential with all of us, and I think they are leading in this area. I mean, I was so happy to hear Ron say today, they put together another technology committee. They do this every 10 years. They're bringing together all of the executive directors for the 50th anniversary conference in March, and there are opportunities there to really elevate the issue and to emphasize that they want leadership of legal services organizations to be innovative. The other thing I'll share is this really terrific book, which I would recommend to all of you. It's called Innovation for Social Change: How Wildly Successful Nonprofits Inspire and Deliver Results. And I'm sorry, I should have had a slide for this. And it's by an author. Her name is Leah Kral. Her last name is Kral. I love this book, and one of the really important points in it that says in order to have an innovation culture, people have to feel safe. And I think that's part of what you're talking about. Like, people have to trust that that they can put anything on the table, and that people aren't going to question their motives or whether they care about the clients or whatever that fear might be. And this book talks a lot about that, really about like the foundational elements for the innovation culture, and that part of that is safety to touch the third rail. It's easy for me to do it because I'm the leader, right? But are there consequences for other people who aren't the leader to put out some of these creative, sometimes crazy ideas?
So I think we only have a minute or so. So I'm going to ask just one final wrap-up question, and it's about looking forward, right? As innovators, we're constantly looking forward. So what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will significantly impact the delivery of services in a legal aid program? And anybody can answer.
Well, I guess the obvious answer probably is sort of generative AI, but I'm also really interested in, so between like the ChatGPTs of the world and Excel pivot tables, there's a lot there, and there are a lot of really sophisticated machine learning models for doing other kinds of things like classifying texts, classifying documents, things that are a lot cheaper to run than like a ChatGPT kind of like size of a model. So I think that that's an area that, especially in a resource-constrained field like ours, is really worth exploring and digging into. How can we figure out how to use like smaller, cheaper models, machine learning models, for doing more targeted tasks? Like, can we fine-tune open source models for specific kinds of work that we want to do? We're never going to be able to just buy everybody ChatGPT. So what can we do with these like other models that are also good, not as powerful, and how can we sort of target how we use these tools more precisely?
So ditto on AI, and hopefully it will change things for the better. So I'll offer something a little bit different. I think that a lot of the experimentation in a number of jurisdictions around paraprofessional programs and partnerships, I think that we're more and more open to partnerships, and that's a good way for legal is only part of the problem in many cases. And so how can we empower different communities and offer resources to them? I think that's something that makes the resources of big and small legal aid organizations go much further, is when you have good partners. So that to me is a really promising development.
Okay. I think that's all the time that we have. Thank you all for joining us.
As a quick reminder, please don't forget to fill out the survey for this session, and then grab your box lunch in our reception room. Thank you.